The leader of Iran's Islamic Revolution has thanked the nation for their large turnout to vote in Friday's parliamentary elections, despite enemy propaganda. Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei said the enemies had launched a full-scale propaganda campaign long before the polls. The leader said they sought to dissuade the people from showing up on election day. Ayatollah Khamenei noted that the Iranian nation thwarted their plot with their, quote, shining participation. The leader said elections in Iran dismiss claims that Islam is opposed to freedom and democracy. He further urged Iranians to remain vigilant in the face of enemies' ploys to strike the pillars of the Islamic Republic. Let's discuss this a little bit further with Mr. Jason Unruhe. He's a political commentator coming to you live via Skype out of Ontario. Jason, it's good to see you. Tell me, what do you think about the recent comments made by the leader today, 2 days after the election? And I'm pretty sure that he has seen the need to talk about foreign factors.
Well, I think it adequately represents the situation on the ground. There very clearly was an election. There was a lawful democratic process that was carried out, and this stands in complete contrast to what is claimed by, frankly, most of the imperialist West, that somehow Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. So this is simply not true. We have literally just seen it right before our very eyes that this is not the case. And it's rather ironic that the Zionist state, one that certainly opposes the rights of people based on their skin color, based on their religion, based on their ethnicity, is supposed to be a democracy. Even by looking at the United States, you have a current president, Donald Trump, who's completely spiteful towards the lawful democratic process. He constantly goes through unofficial channels to get what he wants. He writes executive orders in order to bypass the lawful processes for creating bills and creating laws. So who are they to claim that Iran is not a democracy? We've seen it right there. It's obvious that there has been a significant attempt since the Islamic Revolution to create a situation to try to foment distrust towards the democracy inside of Iran. These says they're trying to destabilize it, and one of the ways they do this, because we do see the United States do this with many countries, including Venezuela, by simply calling the elections or the democratic process illegitimate, not presenting particularly any evidence of this being the case. In fact, as someone who watches a lot of media, I've not seen anything from the United States whatsoever that would cast any doubt on the Iranian elections. Merely blanket statements by the usual talking heads and politicians in these cases. The fact is, they don't have any evidence of Iran's democracy being fraudulent, none whatsoever. They haven't even presented any, and that's just par for the course.
Yeah, of course, the leader's speech also looks at the fact that prior to the elections, there had been a lot of propaganda working on people's minds, basically, to somehow dissuade them from going to the polls, a ploy that has been basically not successful. From that aspect of looking at it, what do you think?
Well, this is it's a common thing to see that if people in a country do not believe in their democracy, they do not believe in their elections, they won't go to vote because they won't feel that it would accomplish anything. But the fact that foreign powers are trying to convince people not to go to the polls inside of Iran shows that this is certainly this is nothing grassroots at all. This is something coming from foreign countries trying to discredit these elections. If the elections were fake or non-existent, as they try to say, then there would be nobody going to the polls to begin with, or at least the numbers of people showing up would be very low. But this is certainly not the case. They are going. They are showing up. And the drive not to go is coming from other countries. So I think this really does show the fraudulent nature of what the United States and the other Western powers allied to Israel, etc., are trying to make this situation appear. This is completely from the outside. This is completely interference. This is not grassroots whatsoever. It's completely artificial.
Jason, what do you think about the vigilance that was involved? You know, you're saying that propaganda was there even before the election, and then you have the participation of the people at the ballot boxes and the leader thanking people for that. What message do you think people are sending to those who didn't want this to happen?
I think this is straight up saying that they're glad the democracy continues to thrive. This is a fundamental pillar of the Islamic Revolution. Anything to the contrary could only be spouted by someone who has done no study on the subject whatsoever. Democracy was a very important part of the entire revolution to begin with. I mean, this sends a very clear signal that despite any disagreements there may be between the people and the leaders in charge, I mean, obviously no system is perfect. The people are always going to have some kind of gripe or some disagreement with those in power, and there's going to be disagreements among people over policy. That's why many countries have a democratic process to begin with, to try to navigate these contradictions between people. But here we see people actively participating in it. They are showing their support, that they do agree with the system, or at least that the system works, and they are participating in it. And the elected officials are certainly expressing support for that continued system, and that the whole veneer that this is illegitimate or non-existent is frankly just a fraudulent idea that is coming out of the West with the particular goal of demonizing Iran, to try to make them out to be an enemy of freedom, an enemy of democracy, in order to justify a violent foreign policy towards the country for simply not bending to the will of the imperialist powers. And this display of, I guess you could call it solidarity between the people and the elected officials, is certainly a tremendous refutation of that.
Thank you very much. That's Mr. Jason Unruhe, political commentator out of Ontario.